Hey, are you a business owner, entrepreneur, or professional? If so, we want you to apply to be a featured guest on our show. My name is Adam Torres, and I host the Mission Matters series of podcasts. I've recorded over 3,000 episodes, and we are just getting started. How do you know if you'd be a good guest to be on the show? Well, only one way to find out, and that's to apply, but I'm going to let you in on a little secret. We want guests that have a story to tell, guests with a brand, a product, or a service that can benefit my audience of listeners. If this sounds like you, go to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to Apply. I'd love to talk to you and get to know more about your story. Again, head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to Apply. All right, now let's get into the show. Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram at AskAdamTorres to keep up with my book releases, book tour schedule, signings, all that other good stuff. Always love to connect with you there. And as always, if you'd like to apply to become a co-author of one of my upcoming books, just head on over to the website, missionmatters.com, and click on Become an Author to Apply. All right, so today I have Cassa Grant on the line. She's a brand and leadership coach and consultant at Cassa Grant Communications. Cassa, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Adam. Thanks for having me.
All right, Cassa, so excited to get into today's topic. So talking about coaching offbeat leaders. So first off, I'm of course going to need you to define what that means for us offbeat leaders, because I feel like there's many offbeat leaders listening to this right now, and I want them to know who they are, including myself, by the way. But before we get into that, I'll start this show like I start all of them with our Mission Matters Minute. So Cassa, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. So that's our mission here. Cassa, what mission matters to you?
I do love this question, and I'm glad that you start the show with it every time. For me, it is authentic communication in action. So, a lot of companies will say one thing on the website, but do something completely different behind the scenes, or they don't have this integrity throughout their branding and their leadership. That starts to play catch up with them. Not only their clients going, wait, they said something and they did something else, but also with their employees, because the employees see you not having integrity, not having your words match your actions. So that is my main mission, is to help companies walk their talk by creating a strong brand, having the leadership align with the brand, and then creating systems that support the goals, the integrity, and the functions of the business. Because you need to be sharing the right things at the right time to the right people, and then you need to be following through on it.
It's awesome. Love bringing mission-based entrepreneurs and executives on the show to share why they do what they do day in and day out. So let's just dive right into today's topic. So being an offbeat leader, and that's one of the things. So coaching offbeat leaders is one of your taglines, and one of the things that you specialize in with through your creation of Wonder Brand and also Wonder Leader. A lot going on. So maybe just start with letting us know, what is that offbeat leader? What does that mean?
Yeah, clearly I made this up, but I made it up because I thought
everything's made up. I like to say that everything's made up. Somebody
exactly.
made up everything, so I love it. So why'd you make this up? Tell me more.
I'll refer to it because I'm an offbeat leader, right? So it's essentially, I started to see this more and more, especially as I'm 40, so my generation kind of gets a little bit older, but it's people who may not have gotten an MBA, may not have followed a traditional, I'm doing air quotes, a traditional career path, whatever that is now. And they feel like they're maybe not what everyone else's idea of a leader should be. So it's essentially, somebody who is in a leadership role, but maybe suffering from imposter syndrome because they feel like maybe they're not, they don't have credentials or qualifications in somebody else's eyes, right? But they're excellent at what they do. They find that they really enjoy leadership more than they ever could have imagined. And they really want to do the best job possible to help the people who they're in charge of or who follow them. So, it's helping them with understanding that the qualities that they bring as someone who might be offbeat or maybe who didn't follow this more, like I said, traditional path, whatever that is, are still really valuable in the leadership space, and people relate to them more because of that. And so, again, I said I'm an offbeat leader. And yes, I have a master's and I have some credentials that help back that up, make myself feel confident. But really right now, when it comes right down to it, I've had I did a lot of traveling. I worked in Antarctica on and off for 5 years. I live in New Zealand now and still work with mostly American clients. So, you have this kind of weird life path that sometimes it is awesome and special, but it also can make you feel like, I'm not wearing shoulder pad suits. And so sometimes you feel like you're more of an offbeat leader than a leader that, again, it's something that people build up in their minds as maybe I'm not as legit as some of these other people, or maybe I don't have the credentials that I see other people having. Does that make sense?
Oh, that's interesting. And so you mentioned Antarctica. So I guess that ties really well in my next question. So is part of being an offbeat leader, you have to have, great stories? Because I feel like that'd be such an asset, just in general. Like, I feel like great leaders or offbeat leaders, we just attract these stories. And I agree with you completely on what you're saying. I'm like, yeah, if I told somebody I wanted to be a podcaster when I was in college, but I don't know if podcasts exist, right? So, so go figure that one. That's pretty offbeat. So, tell me about the story component of that, again, to circle back. Is that an asset? Is it a requirement? How does all that play into it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say yes, but understanding that as long as the story has a universal theme that's applicable, it can be about anything. It can be, I can say, okay, when I was working in Antarctica, I was a materials manager in Antarctica. So the rest of the story can be completely relatable to anybody who manages materials, budgets, people who, any people and workers under them. That part of the story is universal. It's to hook them with Antarctica, or you can use whatever works. I mean, some people some of my clients are really into flying or mountain biking, and those types of, that kind of idea of bringing that whole person to work as a way to communicate and to relate is something that we're doing more and more, I think. And so it's a matter of how do I bring these stories appropriately and also not just like a monologue, right? Because sometimes those types of stories will turn into a monologue that no one can relate to. So you do have to be cognizant of that. But that having those stories about traveling or adventures that you've had, I mean, that's part of building a brand, right? It's building a reputation and helping people understand what they can expect from you. And if it includes interesting stories about adventures from places far off, for me, that's super interesting. So I want to hear those stories.
So how much of leadership is innate, maybe to somebody's personality, whether offbeat or otherwise, right? And how much do you think it has to be taught? I mean, this is such a great question. And I think that, some of us grow up as oldest children, or we grow up in some kind of a leadership role, or maybe we're pushed into leadership roles from an early age because of our personality. So, it feels more natural maybe as adults, right? But then there are people who, again, this is the offbeat leader subcategory, I would say, might feel like, well, I didn't have siblings, or I wasn't the oldest, or, I wasn't pushed into leadership roles, but they still are really good at leadership. And I think that at least, actually, I think most of it can be taught. We're just taught, sometimes you're just taught at an earlier age because of that birth order, or because of, again, teachers saw personality traits that they thought would make you a leader. But you can learn, I think, almost anything, frankly. So it's more about the stories that you tell yourself about what you're capable of than it is about, what you think you can or can't learn. You have to start going, well, maybe I could just learn a little bit about this, or maybe I could just learn this one thing about being a better leader. The main things I see people struggle with would be, storytelling, definitely. Storytelling to sell an idea or initiative is something that most people struggle with to a degree. Delegation is a big one I see in a lot of people that I coach. And also that big picture planning and goal setting, and really having functional goals as well. So all of those things are definitely teachable. Any kind of behavior change is teachable. So I think that it's important to remember that as you want to improve as a leader. So this may seem as kind of a loaded question, but it's not. So I'll kind of rephrase it. So if there was a number one skill you think every leader needs to focus on developing, again, if there is one, I'm sure there's many, and I don't want to oversimplify things for the sake of a 20-minute podcast or 30-minute podcast episode. But if there was one, what would you say every leader needs to focus on developing?
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned in the last question was storytelling for sure, because it's not, the storytelling has helped you build rapport so people start to know, like, and trust you. That's how you get more buy-in, right? That's how you get people to do the things that you think are the value-adding activities, right? It also gives context. So when people can't see the bigger context behind why you're asking them to do something, it makes it harder for them to either prioritize it in the way that you want it prioritized, or to do it in the way that you want it done, or the intention that you could put forth. So giving that context is so valuable. And I think people really or underestimate exactly how important it is to be able to give people the why behind what you want through stories, give examples, that kind of thing. It also really makes sure that you're showing your mission in action. So this goes back to what I was talking about with my mission was, how do we not only say the things that we want to do, but then do them, make sure that all of that stuff, there's continuity between what we're saying and what we're doing and how we're showing it to people. And then you tell those stories to show, this is what we did with our mission. This is how it's showing up. It's also incredibly motivating to have a great story to help you focus your energy as a worker, a leader. Depending on what the context is, it helps you add that meaning, like I said before, with what you're doing. So that can be really motivating. And then finally, this is just brain science, but it activates brain chemistry in ways that numbers and other mediums don't. So our brains are hardwired for story, like different parts of the brain light up in response to story. And we also are able to process and actually metabolize and make meaning of the information because of a story, So it's kind of like the difference between saying, I understand that it hurts to break my arm, but then when you've broken your arm, So if you have a story that helps them understand what that means, or helps them really get that meaning, it's actually going to really get the point across a lot quicker, and also get you the buy-in that you want.
That's awesome. So, Cassa, with the last couple of minutes we have here, I'd like you to tell us a little bit more about Cassa Grant Communications and the types of individuals and organizations that get the most value out of working with you and your team. So tell us a little bit more about your company.
Yeah, so I started out doing individual coaching, which I still do. So I do CEO, C-suite coaching, leadership coaching in that capacity, generally from companies that are pulling in around $10 million a year or under, so smaller to medium businesses. And where I see myself helping in that gap is, like I said, the brand and activity alignment. So, and that can be from creation of brands, like articulating what your brand actually already is. It's not really you don't make a brand up. You go from the customers and the clients and the people in the organization, and you articulate what they're saying about themselves, basically. But then it's taking those key messages and actually implementing them throughout the organization, so that it's not just the founder saying, this is my vision. It's everybody saying, well, this is our mission, and then this is how we're going to actually make it happen. And that can be anything from, strategic initiatives for how to implement that, and individualized coaching. I do group coaching with companies as well. So like for people who are maybe in a lead category, not maybe a C-suite, but leads, we'll do like a group coaching program to help them really connect with each other, but also make sure that they understand how to be in this new role, right? Because a lot of times people, especially with that size of company, you want to promote from within, which is important and great, but you also need to support people as they move into those roles. And sometimes I see there being gaps there. So really helping people understand how to, put that mission into action is where I see myself fitting into these roles really, really well. And so I would say, with that, a lot of my clients are amazing people. They've gotten to a point, they've grown to a point where they really can't see how to go to that next stage. And that's where I come in and help them.
Fantastic. Well, Cassa, it has been a pleasure speaking with you today and getting to know more about why you do what you do, and also the way you're helping your clients. So that being said, if somebody's listening to this and they want to follow up and they want to learn more about Cassa Grant Communications, what's the best way for them to connect?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm very active on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. So my name is spelled funny. It's Cassa. Grant, and I'd love to connect with people there. I also am on Instagram, and then my website, of course, is cassagrant.com. So if you would love to see, I have a newsletter that I send out at least every week that has a lot about leadership, branding, and confidence and how to build your confidence. So that can be really helpful for people to just kind of come into the world. But LinkedIn and Instagram is where I really hang out quite a lot.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, Cassa, again, appreciate you coming on the show today. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. Hope you got a lot of value out of this. Hope you learned a lot. If you did, don't forget, hit that subscribe button, especially if you're a first-time listener or visitor. We definitely want to have many more mission-based entrepreneurs and organizations coming up, and we don't want you to miss a thing. And Cassa, thanks again for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Adam. I appreciate it. And it's been a pleasure, too.